What do you do if you get a shear with a nick like that? Look at that. Look at that, beyond the rod line. That's pretty awful, isn't it? The other side, same thing. Now you may have seen my other video where the shear came to me with all kinds of pieces missing, and I was able to put it back together. But that's not even the original bumper, because that's not what the bumper looks like. This is some crazy stuff. But this tip, even with it closed, it's picked up some magnetized dust here. Need to demagnetize it. Hey, it's good to have one of these little things. That took care of it. Somehow this was magnetized on top of everything. Oh. Look at that with them closed. So my choices are, I could just try to rework the rod line, take off that much metal and make them really pointy. I think I'm just going to shorten them. And let me show you how I would shorten a pair of shears. 100 micron, that's the coarsest thing I've got. I've got some of the 400 grit, and that's pretty coarse too. I think this is what I want to use. I'm going to be taking enough off that I'm going to go full blast and spray water on it because it will overheat. And I'm just going in straight. Sometimes it's good, you can actually smell, I know you can't smell this, sometimes it's good just to drop it in some water like this too. Almost there. I think I can get it from there. Let me let you see what I've got here. Yeah, still have a little bit of a chip here. See that? About a millimeter. About a millimeter on that side. I think I can work with that. Any of deep nicks? Just normal nicks. So let's go to clean this up. This one is an adventure. I think I need to charge him more for this one. What you think? Take all my parts out. Don't have to clean my parts because they're all brand new. I'll clean up these shears a little bit. And I'm going to choose to do these at a 40-degree angle instead of 45 or 50 because whoever owns these are not taking care of their shears. So let's clean them up. I got a really nice call yesterday from my brother-in-law, from Harry, and he got one of these stones. And he was saying about how happy he was with it because he said it doesn't seem to need to be flattened as often as other stones. Somehow I've gotten a lot of dust on it. I have not been taking care of this thing. But this Neguro stone will clean it up pretty good. I was sharpening a bunch of knives on the Cymec, and between that and like the dust of shortening this shear just really created a lot of dust around here. Normally not taking off that much metal with my work. But you should be aware of your surroundings because you really don't want grit falling on some of your finer grit, coarse grit. Alright, so I've got my red in here. Pressure on my pivot hole. Well, at least they're not out of alignment. Now, even though I have a lot of deep nicks, I really don't need to go to a coarse grit. I can use my usual grit, which is Warren 800. Now that one's got a lot of mess on it, so I'm going to clean it up a little bit. That makes it last longer. It's still not perfect, but I don't need to go to something really coarse because I'm going to be dropping these down. These looks like they've never been sharpened. I'm going to be able to drop these down to a 40-degree angle, where that's much lower than what the factory set them at, so that burr is going to come up pretty fast. You carefully run your fingernail on the kind of on the outside. You can tell if you've gone beyond your nicks, and I have. I told you it wouldn't take long, even with a pretty fine grit. If you're having to do restoration work like this, it might be good to charge a little bit more. Still got that chip there. Round it off a little bit more. Wiggling it to try to see if I've got the right adjustment. Now I had someone I talked to recently was saying about they sharpen everything freehand because they all cut wet tissue. Well, cutting wet tissue, all that does, it tells me if all my nicks are gone, and it tells me if I've got the burrs off. It does not tell me how sharp it is. And the only way I know what the angle is because I set the clamp. If I were freehanding it, I would have no clue of what it actually is. Even feeling with my thumb. See, it feels really sharp. I would think it was 45. But, you know, I happen to know it's not. A lot of times if people are freehanding, it's okay for people that just do straight cutting, like I assume this person does. But it could be a real problem if they're a customer that does a lot of slide cutting, is expecting their shears to be real pointy. So now I'm going back to my cushion plate, and I'm going to shorten it down and round it off a little bit. And I'm kind of going toward the middle where I'm not taking as much of the grit off when I'm doing my other previous sharpening. You see how I'm kind of rounding that tip off? That's not a usual thing I would do, but because that chip is so low in there, I really don't want to take any more length off this shear than I have to. See some Sharpies still on there I need to take off. You see some crazy stuff out there. Now if this had been in the middle, this deep chip, I would have just walked away from it. Let's see what that looks like, what that feels like. That's pulling. I'm just going to have to shorten it. Get something more aggressive. I try to do this as little as possible. This is a 400 grit. Oh, what? That's stupid. Where it's magnetizing on here. That's where I'm going to use my demagnetizer. Still pulling there at the tip. I'm going to do a little roughness at the tip. Like a little teensy tiny micro serrations. So maybe it'll grab hair at the tip. Cutting dry at the tip. It's not cutting wet at the tip. Let's see how it cuts hair. If it cuts hair, I'm just going to let it go. Got some hair here somewhere. Get another piece. Nope. You see that? Nope. It's going to be a problem. Alright, I'm going to try something. I'm flipping this down to 35. I'm going to do like a little micro bevel. Very coarse micro bevel. Cut it off on a paper towel. You see how that worked? It cuts. I could have kept working it, taking that much metal off, but I want it to preserve as much as possible. So I did a little micro bevel from here down that's pretty rough on one blade. And that's fixed it. Now I could have worked with this forever and maybe got it like new. I'm still think I see a little tiny gap. You know, that's such a tiny gap. I'm just going to leave it there. Sometimes good enough is good enough. But those shears went from impossible to cutting. And they were 5.5. And they're still 5.5. So they would be considered, even though I took off a good bit, they'd still be considered 5.5. Always double check your adjustment. I'm going to do it maybe one more click. And those are good to go. Now, if you like watching shear sharpening, I've got a lot of videos, so check them out. Stop by my website, bonika.com. I'm going to be doing around the country small group sharpening classes you may want to attend, and I have private classes back at our office in Atlanta, Georgia. And we also have like sharpening conventions and things like that. So come over and visit our website and visit us here in Atlanta too. Most of the shears you're going to come across are not this crazy.